Toss wherever. You go straight ahead. Oh! Good thing it floats.
Jesus, yeah, right? Was it a bad?
That scared me. Come on, net. Let's go. Thank you, sir. Yeah, take it too. She bleeding. Alright, I'm going to run through the evolution of my lures and the learning curves that I had along the way. I fished throughout my whole childhood, but never really threw lures or had much luck with them. I actually learned how to fish by vertical jigging grass shrimp for smallmouth, but that's a story for another video. Most of my recreational time as a teen I'd spend at the skate park, but I never lost my love for fishing. Fast forward to the winter of 2018, I crashed my pit bike and needed surgery on my knee. So for the next months, I watched so much fishing videos and content on YouTube. As the weather started to warm up around springtime, there was no real chance of me making it back to the skate park, so I went digging in the old shed to find my old childhood fishing tackle. I had so much fun fishing that 2019 season, and it really got me hooked, no pun intended. Mainly catching smallmouth my whole childhood, going for largemouth was fresh and exciting. The 2019 season I experimented with a lot of conventional and quickly gravitated towards grub and paddle tails on quarter-ounce jig heads. That next winter I'd become even more obsessed with fishing, watching any content that I could find on YouTube and absorb everything that I could. But I had the strong itch to revisit chasing smallies. I have two buddies that played a big part with me getting into swimbaits, Alec and Jake. Being obsessed with fishing, I joined a bunch of Facebook groups and quickly noticed a member local to me that consistently posted up beautiful smallies. This is how I heard about Jake and eventually would cross paths with him at one of his local favorite ponds. Him being the incredibly genuine person that he is, I got invited to join him chasing some bronze smallies. He quickly became someone that I looked up to, and we fished together a lot that season. A canon event would be the first time I'd fished Wachusett Reservoir with Jake and his buddy John. And Jake would end up buying a 7-inch slammer from John that day, and it really piqued my interest. At that point, I was semi-familiar with swim baits, but was still pretty intimidated. So the next night, Jake and I went swim baiting for largies, and I even caught my first soft swim fish with Jake's guidance. What really made an impression on me was witnessing Jake hammer them on that 7-inch slammer, and it really opened my eyes to topwater. With Jake's Heart, owned by Smallies, I leaned back into largemouth fishing and would meet up with Alec anytime I could to throw swims, and even traveling out to Springfield to fish some of his spots. At this point, I was buying everything that caught my eye and I could get my hands on. I quickly got the urge to tinker with a bait and decided to paint up a bull wake. A lot of optimism was met with the reality of how difficult and challenging this will be. Needless to say, my first attempt was a fail, and I gave it another shot with some sandpaper and spray paint. That winter of 2020, I'd try cutting and carving my first builds. The paint jobs were still rough, and the baits were even more rough, mainly to the factor that I was half-assing most of it just to see if I could actually make something. But every build, I'd learn something new. With my early fascination of broomstick baits, my first attempt would be made from a wooden ladder dowel. I based it off of a slammer, but neglected putting ballast weight out of ignorance. Again, needless to say, the bait didn't swim at all. This would lead me to carve my first bait out of a block of wood, and at this time I really focused on cutting joints and figuring out how to shape a lure. I'd carve a handful of baits, but only finished a few due to still taking it as a casual hobby, and they still didn't swim great. With this knowledge, I learned the importance of joint and weight placement to make a bait perform properly. Going into the 2021 season, I fell deep into the high-end swim bait market and wouldn't make another bait that whole year. I did accomplish catching my first fish on one of my lures, which is a core memory for me. Leading into the 2022 season, I built my first glide bait, as I wanted to challenge myself and had been learning how to fish glides. It didn't swim perfect, but I started catching with it instantly and consistently. This would ignite the flame to continue making lures and keep pushing myself to improve. I'd go on to build another glide, and this time I'd take a stab at carving gill plates and facial features. The trout glide and perch wake I'd carve resembled nothing like the fish that I attempted, but the next perch glide I'd build would give me a glimpse of what I'm capable of. At this point, I hit a creative block and was taking suggestions on what to carve next. One of my buddies, Mike, would recommend a pickerel lure, leading me to try designing something more in depth. I'd build multiple models and continue to improve, even starting to clear coat with epoxy. This is when I'd gain some confidence in my work and begin to post on social media more. The pickerels were liked, but they didn't receive a lot of interest, so I'd return to trying perch and trout baits. These next baits would really shine on the potential that I had, even with still using spray paint. This would be around the time my mother would pass away at the beginning of 2023, and I'd use lure making as my therapy. Continuing to push myself, I'd try new fish profiles like herring and shiners and work on improving my painting skills, and quickly realized that an airbrush would be my next big move. This is when my painting would massively improve and the public response would reinforce my drive to continue. Even selling some glides to a few followers that always showed interest on my Instagram, as well as catching my first striper on one of my lures. Another big moment would happen right before that saltwater trip. Every wake I'd build, I would use a softtail from a Toxic or a Lanciati lures, but when I started making glides, I preferred a more rigid silicone tail like the high-end ones I preferred to fish. I'd buy these tails from the website of the biggest builder at the time. We'll just say it rhymes with jizz. After selling a few glides and the customers posting them on social media, I received a polite request to cease using his tails for my builds. I quickly responded that it was not an issue and left it at that. Funny enough, this would be right after I made a big order of tails from his website. But this would lead me to completely redesign my tail slot, and it would turn into one of my favorite features about my lures. Taking inspiration from production Japanese baits that have removable tails, at first I'd use dual brand tails until they became discontinued, and then I would carve and mold my own. After my first drop on Instagram of only 6 baits, I spent the rest of 2023 practicing larger batches of lures and quickly realized the need to switch to resin baits. At the beginning of the 2024 season, I'd start carving my first masters and instantly chose a perch as my first resin bait. This is where I chose to design my masters as modular and keep the dimensions as similar as possible. With a 3-piece wake and a 2-piece glide, I could swap the tails and create 4 baits out of 2. I spent a lot of time on the perch and received less attention than expected, so I took a step back through 2024 and wouldn't design another bait until that next winter, with the introduction of my bluegill and my shiner. At this point, I was increasingly desperate to further my craft and business, so I incorporated swivels into my baits and started taking social media more serious, leading us into where we're at currently in 2025. I've seen the most growth this year, and I'm very excited to continue this journey, and I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you guys like swim baits and swim bait fishing, please consider subscribing and comment your favorite bait you like to throw. I hope you guys enjoyed learning a little bit about myself, and I hope to catch you guys in the next one. Peace.